Know that there is two versions of everything on this planet. One is a counterfeit and one is real. Allow me to begin. The globe Earth. We know who created the globe Earth, and we know it was pushed on society. And if you don't believe the globe Earth, then that means you're an idiot from this society. The true description of what the Earth looked like, including from the ancients. But again, we are called idiots if we believe this, because science say different. One is real and one is a counterfeit. You decide. And we also know about Egypt, also in Africa. But information is coming out that they found that there's an Egypt in America that's way older than the one in Africa. And the artifacts was found in the Grand Canyon in America. This is those artifacts right there. So if it's true, which I 100% believe is true, then that means that the real Egyptians lived in America. So what does that mean about the land of Israel and also the Israelites? If Egypt is in America and the children of Israel were slaves to the Egyptians, then that means it's a possibility that the land of Israel is in America, close to Utah. And I find it strange that Jerusalem is in the middle of Utah and this place is uninhabited, just like how Scripture said. In Scriptures, it said that Jerusalem will be uninhabited. No one will live there. No one, period. So over there in that land of Israel, it don't match with Scriptures to me. And Utah sounds pretty close to Judah. That's crazy. Jerusalem over there in Africa, so that makes two. One is a counterfeit and one is real. But shoot, I don't know. You decide. Well, I do know. I'm just letting you decide. Also, there's two different versions of every nation on this earth. There's a black one and there's a censorship. I'm not trying to get banned, but you know what I'm talking about. The Native American, the Aboriginal Native Americans. One is black and the other is Europeans. Aboriginal Europeans. More Aboriginal Europeans. Again, one is black and one is I don't know. Aboriginal Chinese. Aboriginal Chinese. Another Aboriginal Chinese. One more Aboriginal Chinese woman. And a Chinese man that we see today. One is Aboriginal and the other is counter.
The ancient pyramids of Mississippi and their strange powers. So Mississippi, beautiful land, hold a secret that go against what we usually know. There was ancient pyramids that to a smart group of people a long time. Now we're gonna learn about these lost pyramids, which was broken down when the new folk came to America, and how they still impact people today. Now it's similar to the Bermuda Triangle in a story from the past, way before Columbus came. Before he came to America, a group of people lived here and built things like pyramids. And these pyramids showed just how smart these folks was and how good they was at building and knowing about the stars and all that kind of junk. And people think that these pyramids were very special places for their beliefs, but history books don't talk much about it. Matter of fact, they don't talk at all about it. Pyramids was destroyed and hidden. So when the new folk came from Europe, they took over the land and destroyed a lot of the old stuff because, they ain't mean nothing to them, including these pyramids. Now they wanted to take away the cultures of the people. It was like the number one way to just slap them in the face. But some say that not all the pyramids was destroyed. Some of them still buried under hills, all over the Mississippi area, all up along the Mississippi River and all that. And these hidden pyramids is waiting to be found and studied. Now, it's like a magic type of thing around them. And what's interesting, these pyramids is thought to have some kind of power that affect people's minds. Just like them strange things in the triangle. These pyramids said to give off this energy that can change the way we think. And people believe that being near these can make us feel different and even see things that ain't normal. Changing how people think. And people who've gone near the pyramids where the hidden like stuff might be. They talk about these strange experiences. And they say they felt that their senses were stronger and they saw things they couldn't explain. And they felt like their minds was different. And this makes us wonder if these old pyramids still having an impact on us even though they're hidden away. Now, the pyramids of Mississippi is important because it tells us about people who lived a long time ago and just how smart they really was. A lot of this stuff we got that we think is new now, that junk ain't new. And we should work to find these pyramids and learn from them and the magic stuff that they got coming up off of them. But it reminds us of the past that still can affect us in ways we don't understand.
And then it closed down, and now they're demolishing, or everything has become abandoned, as is the case here, a little of both. Again, these lime kilns sharing this similar feature. Hole on the top, geothermal area. And this city, this abandoned city, is called Skaltubo in Georgia. It was said that Joseph Stalin visited one of these resorts, had his own private bath, and died shortly after, unrelated to the bath. And here's a look at that city in its heyday. I mean, looking World's Ferry. And here's a look at some of the ruins today. So we see the old, what in America would be coined as a kind of Richardsonian blockwork. Very Romanesque up here, very goth. Here again, just ruins of a supposed hot springs. And going back to the hole in the top is something missing. Like I said, something may have gone up and out to complete these machines. Another good example is French Lick, Indiana. We have a giant dome with some device sticking out of it, pointing down like some wand that may have emitted some kind of energy. And I think to wrap up part one, I'm gonna show you some devices that Martin shared. We can see down here his alias, Marticus von Liedtke. And these are devices, most of these in India. In India, everything is always nice and preserved in India, giving us a good idea of what by the time we see in our more developed countries has been stripped down, demolished, or bastardized. Here's another one of these pieces of tech pointing down. This one is awesome. Again, reminding me of the device in Indiana. Here's another one, really intricate. We would be told that this was carved out of stone. Of course, it's ridiculous. And they actually seem like they may have been made of metal. I think sometimes when we see such complexities, we may not even be dealing with a stone or geopolymer, but maybe something else that has been rendered into what seems like. This one is really amazing. Here we have one protruding down, surrounded by what looks like a dozen smaller ones. And one more of Martin's shares. Here we see some pipe organs, and each pipe organ leading up to a little tower, showing that the towers aren't just towers. All of this having a purpose, and this is really extravagant to have 3 different examples here.
Yo, somebody's been lying, but we're about to get to the bottom of it. There's a reason why we go all around the world to vacation, but people from all around the world come here to live forever. Eden, noun, early 13th century, delightful place, figurative use of the place described in Genesis, usually referred to Hebrew Eden, all right? Pleasure, delight, but perhaps from the Ugaritic base, din, all right? And meaning a place that is well watered throughout, all right? A place that is well watered throughout. So y'all remember the Egyptian mounds, right, that were found in Tennessee, that were buried by the Norris Dam, right? Or the pyramid in Ohio that was broken down and turned into a dam, right? We also have Wisconsin pyramids that are under a lake, and beautiful towns that were submerged, okay? Now you might be wondering, how are they able to submerge and hide so many ancient structures? Well, let's get back to it. A place that is well watered throughout. This right here is the Mississippi and its tributaries. looks well watered to me. America is actually so well watered that it has 91,757 dams, all right? This is including Guam and Puerto Rico. And if you look at this map right here, this will show you 8,100 major dams in the United States as of 2006. But watch this. Do you think it's a coincidence that they cover majority of the land that belonged to the Mississippians, where you would find all the pyramids and mounds? Now, if we know they were using dams and redirecting water to cover up certain things, right? Wouldn't that make you say, I wonder why they have so many dams in this area, to be exact. So it's either because of the pyramids or all the giants they found right here on this land. Moreover, you shall scarce see a house, but the south is begirt with hives of bees, which increase after an incredible manner, so that if there be any terrestrial Canaan, 'tis surely here, where the land floweth with milk and honey. Welcome to the land of Eden, America. Peace and love, y'all. If you ask me,
discovered the ruins of an ancient civilization off the coast of St. Bernard Parish.
Underwater that may have once been the site of a lost city thousands of years ago.
Paul Murphy reports local fishermen have long talked about strange and unexplained things happening in that area.
The Chandeleur Islands are a chain of uninhabited barrier islands located in the Gulf of Mexico, 50 miles east of New Orleans. But 12,000 years ago, before a dramatic sea level rise at the end of the last ice age, this area may have been dry land.
3 different search areas.
Retired architect and amateur archaeologist George Gillet believes the site, now underwater, was once home to an ancient civilization. He dubbed the city Crescentus.
What's down there is hundreds of buildings that are covered with sand and silt and that are geographically related to the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Giza is a city in northern Egypt where ancient pyramids and the Sphinx are located. Gillet claims to have found mysterious mounds of granite under Chandeleur Sound. Granite is not native to Louisiana or Mississippi.
Somebody floated a billion stones down the Mississippi River and then assembled them outside of what would later become New Orleans.
The original copy, the original, right there in the Grand Canyon, USA, America. Turtle Island, that's the original, right up there in the Grand Canyon. And that's why certain parts of the Grand Canyon are off limits. They don't want us knowing the truth. You've been lied to.
Lake Pyramid
is Lake Pyramid, found in northwest Nevada. They say America has no pyramids. Cap. This pyramid is 14,000 years old. Amazing. Beautiful scenery. This is an ancient picture of the pyramid. This, said to be rock erosion, looks like a statue. Glyphs found at the pyramid are 14,000 years old. This skull was found on the beach, 10,000 years old. We know the truth now.
Most Americans have no idea that ancient cities with advanced architectures once dotted the ancient North American landscape. Advanced ancient civilizations once inhabited the North American continent. And this fact was common knowledge just 200 years ago.
As Europeans moved northward from the Gulf in the 1530s and westward from Virginia after 1607 and westward from Plymouth Rock in 1620, they did learn that the place had been occupied for a long time. Thomas Jefferson was well aware that there were very, very big earthworks.
What were these ancient earthworks? Ancient city walls, buildings, roads, burial sites.
Artifacts of iron were found, artifacts of hardened copper, stone tablets with writing. Regular farmers just plowing their fields would really turn up literally bushel baskets of arrowheads, spear points, etc. And these things were commonplace.
The real question is, why are these advanced civilizations not more commonly known of today? The answers can be found in two surprising places. First, in the 19th century implementation of the doctrine of manifest destiny, and second, in the then emerging conflict between evolutionary science and religion.
Manifest destiny is the ideal that not only are we unique and our institutions are unique, but we have a unique mission to spread that and to take that across the continent. And then the third area is that we are uniquely qualified or called. It is our destiny.
This idea of the different races not only having separate creations, but perhaps they also had different capabilities. That's where that played into it, because it's a small step from there to start talking about allegedly superior or inferior races. And that's exactly.
What's up, everybody? This dude finds this pyramid right here inside a tree in Michigan. Watch.
We're downtown Flint. Downtown. So check this out. That tree is clearly 300 years old. Probably 200. But look at what we found inside. What is this? I got some markings on it, but I don't know. That ain't natural. Anybody got any thoughts?
They opened up the coffin and found a skeleton of a man holding a little box that was about 8.10 inches in size. The box had been cemented shut here. This, by the way, is sitting in Ohio. Well, he opened up the box and he found a little man inside, a little black stone. They took it to scholars and they looked at it. The man seems to be carrying something, and there's writing here at first they couldn't recognize. The writing is, they thought in 1860, some sort of Hebrew. Well, finally, about 20 years later, they found some rabbis living in the area, and the rabbis looked at that, and they could read it. They said it was an old kind of block Hebrew, and it was a rendition of the Ten Commandments.
These are the holy stones of Ohio. The oldest known record of the Ten Commandments was found in America, written in ancient Hebrew script dating back to the time of Solomon. The Ten Commandments in Hebrew in Ohio. We know the truth now.
Did the Aztecs build this?
No.
They did not build this?
No, the Aztecs, they found it.
They found it?
600 years later.
Who built this?
That is a good question.
Okay.
Nobody knows exactly, but 80% the experts, they mention the Quichulcas guys. It was another culture. So Olmecs, the oldest, the mother's culture, the people in Mexico, Aztecs, Mayas, Toltecs, Zapotecs, and many more, they believe it, that Olmecs was the number one and was the most.
Olmecs?
That is in the coast, in Veracruz and
It's a native culture called Olmecs.
Olmecs.
Graves that were unearthed revealed elaborate burial practices. This all seemed too exotic to be indigenous to what people thought of as the New World. When confronted with the question of who built these earthen structures, America didn't accept that these finds were the work of ancestral Indians. The finds indicated a more sophisticated culture had once thrived there. Not only did the current lifestyle of the Indians seem unrelated, but the Indians themselves, when asked who was responsible for the mounds, didn't have an answer. But the Indians themselves, when asked who was responsible for the mounds, didn't have an answer.
People who built the mounds was that they couldn't have been Native Americans. They had to have been constructed by someone
into a country, plague the whole place out, and then take over their buildings. New York was already there for thousands of years. San Francisco was there for thousands of years. Los Angeles was there for thousands of years. They were built by the indigenous people who were black and Indians as well.
Whoa.
The black people, they weren't brought over by slaves. They are the original owners of America.
Thank you.
Black people.
We are the American Indians. We are going to start things off here for today's episode. Congressional record containing the proceedings and debates of the 58th Congress, 3rd session. Volume, 39? Washington Government Printing Office, 1905. Let's see what we found. So, as we jump in right in here, it says, the self-defining statement that we, the people of the United States, do ordain this Constitution, right, referred to other inhabitants of the states and territories, okay? The inhabitants, all right? The indigenous folks, the autochthonous folks, all right? The original folks, the aboriginal folks, right? Who at that time were racially distinguished from the people of the United States. They were the classification, right? They were the Negro race who were then held in slavery and were so recognized in terms by the Constitution, their Constitution, and Indian tribes organized in separate but independent tribal governments, and Indians, there's the word again, in the states who were not taxed. The racial designation of the sovereign people. All right? Right here. The inhabitants of the states and territories. The Indians. Right? But once they change their name, right? Once they change their identity, right, to Negro or Black, right, which is just Black in Spanish, they are removed from the land, okay? This is why it's important to self-identify as only American Indians. That's it. Because what we're doing collectively is that we're trying to be different or special, right? And saying that, oh no, we're not the Indians, we're the Black Indians. While other people are coming in and taking their American Indian identity, and they are receiving educational benefits, housing benefits, employment benefits, reparations, right? Everything. So it says right here, the inhabitants of the states and territories who at the time were racially distinguished from the people of the United States. They were the Negro race who were then held in slavery. Again, we the people of the United States do ordain that it referred to someone else. It referred to the Indians who were distinguished as Negro. And there's only one group in the Americas that were called the Negro. One group in the USA, to be specific, in the United States, that were called the Negro race and held in slavery. All right? So, no more.
Wow.
African Americans. They don't come from Africa. They were already here. And they plagued them out. And they stole, the Smithsonian Institute stole their knowledge, stole their history, and now we're just left wondering who we are, where we come from. They did a catastrophe on this earth. Just only a few hundred.
Ancient people who lived thousands of years ago more advanced than us. The narrative that we're taught in school is that people in ancient days, thousands of years ago, were primitive in their...
have happened here. The site is built 12,000 feet above sea level. This is very oxygen-poor air in which the slightest exertion can cause nausea and worse, and yet blocks of up to 200 tons were maneuvered over distances of up to 90 miles in rarefied air. This is not possible by muscular strength. This grand complex was built with a technical skill embarrassing to us and by a method which is totally unknown to us today. With truncated pyramids, artificial hills, lines of monoliths, platforms, underground rooms, and giant gates which incorporate architecture beyond our technical scope today. Many large gateways were built from a single stone. The Gate of the Sun is the biggest carved monolith in the world. It is a single block of rock, 10 feet high and 6 feet wide. Many of the great buildings were dynamited, and then untold treasures disappeared. One 24-foot statue remains. But the records are there. You see, when the Spanish got there, they made records of it. And then they tore them down, blew them up to salvage the gold, silver, and the metals, shipped them off to Spain. Here's the point. Here are buildings at 12,000 feet in Bolivia that we could not build today, let alone at 12,000 feet. And we're being told, you know, in our movies and in our books, that these great monuments were built by slave labor, and they were built by hand, without wheels, without pulleys, just by pure muscle. That's preposterous poppycock. You talk about fantasy world. Hey, you talk about fairy tales. That's a fairy tale. In Job 38, verse 24, we read a scientific question. It says, by what way is it that the light is parted? Or paraphrased, it says, by what way or technique is the light apportioned or separated? Can you imagine asking that question 4,000 years ago? It is, of course, today a simple one, and the student instantly answers, well, by passing it through the prism of the spectroscope. But who could have known that 4,000 years ago in Job's day? And since it's manifestly impossible for any human mind to frame a question that the mind knows nothing of, a greater mind than the mind of Job is the questioner here. But when we heat a metal red hot or heat any substance until it's incandescent, it gives forth rays of light. These rays, after passing through the prism of the spectroscope, divide themselves on a graph according to the content of the matter that sent them forth. So when a ray of light reaches us from some far-flung star, it need only to pass that ray of light through the spectroscope to see the composition of that star and the proportion of each of its ingredients. This division of light rays is always constant. It doesn't vary in the least particular, so that we may always rely upon its results. It's called spectroscopic analysis. And this is the manner by which the light is apportioned. Now, this places us in a quandary, because either Job knew this, or we're dealing with a supernatural wisdom here. You know, it's one thing to say, well, yeah, we could duplicate that today. But when you've got monuments out here, as I pointed out last time, you got a block of rock that weighs 200,000, not 200 tons, 200,000 tons, which is 5 Queen Marys. Somebody quarried that block of rock and then moved it and set it in place. There isn't anybody in the world today that can do that. There are pyramids in the world that are bigger than the Great Pyramid of Cheops. Now, if you're like me, you heard that the Great Pyramid of Egypt is the biggest pyramid in the world. Down in Mexico City, 40 miles out of town, there's a couple of pyramids called the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon. I saw those as a kid. I was about 20 years old or so. I went down there and I looked at those pyramids. Oh my God, these two pyramids look just like the pyramids over in Egypt. How could these people over here in the New World be building pyramids that look just like the pyramids in Egypt unless they had had some kind of communication? The pyramids are in China. They're in Australia. They're in the United States of America. Did you know we got 9 pyramids over here in the United States of America sitting over in Illinois? I never read about those pyramids here in the United States when I went to school. I never heard a word about them. My wife is from Illinois, and she said, have you ever heard of the pyramids in Illinois? I looked at her like, pyramids? She says, yeah, they're about the same size as the Great Pyramid of Cheops in Egypt, and there's 9 of them in Illinois. And I looked at her like, lady, you got to be out of your mind. There's no pyramids in America. If there were, I would have heard about it when I went to school. And she said, well, turn left here. Let's go take a look at one. So we drove out into the countryside. And here's this great big mountain. There are parks. You know, the state of Illinois has a park there. I climbed to the top of one of them. The top of the pyramid, the top of this pyramid in Illinois is 1/2 acre in size. That's the top. The top is 1/2 acre. It's bigger than your house. It's bigger than your lot. And somebody packed all that dirt up there. I'm telling you, boys and girls, that if you had to go out here and build that pyramid today, if you called the Caterpillar Tractor Company, you'd have to have a major contracting outfit like Guy F. Atkinson to come out there and build something like that. You know, we look at it and we say, with a bunch of baskets carrying dirt, stacked it up there. There's no Indian tribes around here ever claimed that they built that thing. It was there when they arrived. That's what they're telling them.
This looks like mountains, and we know that there are mountains even now, but they're all covered in ice. But it raises the question of, well, this map is very old. I believe it was made in the 1500s. Yes, it was made in 1513, and it certainly does seem like they had a lot of cartography expertise in those days. But here is the map that I was really wanting to show you today. This is a map that actually kind of shows it better, because the other map, the Piri Reis map, it leaves it a question, is that Antarctica? It's really hard to tell, but this one, it's pretty clear that we've got North America here, South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, and we can even see, you know, the names of the places we have. Virginia and Florida, Rio Grande, Africa, Constantinople, Hispania, which would be Spain, Sardinia, that would be, I'm guessing, Patagonia right here. And yes, Patagonia is on the southern tip of South America, and it is very close to Antarctica. And this is the coastline of Antarctica. And what I find to be very interesting is that there are names for these places. This name in particular is very intriguing because I looked up the meaning of Terra Sancta, and it means Holy Land. I'll leave a link in the description so you can follow it if you would like. I will say he does not have a biblical perspective. He does kind of have a ancient aliens perspective, but he has some very interesting videos and photographs here, and I'm going to be showing you some of them that I did find from him. All of the photographs that I'm going to be sharing with you now come from the Instagram account that I just showed you, and he doesn't say specifically where he got the photographs from. So I will say that I cannot verify that these are all definitely from Antarctica. But he claims that they are all from Antarctica and that they were taken in the late 19th century. So this would have been before the Antarctic Treaty, you know, when all of the, not all of them, but a bunch of the nations around the world signed a treaty basically making it impossible for people to explore here unless they have the nod of the individual governments. So this is claimed to be some ruins from some civilization in Antarctica. So I just wanted to look through them with you. This seems to be columns. It almost reminds me of the columns that are left standing in Rome, of the ruins of the temples, and even of the columns that are in Washington, D.C., the standalone columns that were supposedly left over from when they were refurbishing, I believe it was either the Capitol or the White House. So kind of reminiscent of this. Although they do look a bit more weathered, but maybe because of the weather, get it? No, but they may have experienced more erosion because of where they were at. But that's the impression that I get, is some sort of columns. These are some statues. And I mean, if you look in the background, it certainly does appear to be an Antarctic landscape. And you can really make out the features on the face. He has a mustache. This, well, it's clearly a woman. I see that now. I was going to see if it had a beard, but maybe it's a veil. But these are people. These are statues. This almost looks like it was bombed or had a fire. It wouldn't surprise me if it was bombed, because we saw what happened with all the great fires in the major cities. I know, at least in the United States, I know there was a great fire of London too. And many of us believe that those fires occurred so that they could hide history. And so it would not surprise me in the least bit if that's what happened here, if they would not want people to know that there was a civilization in Antarctica too. Some more. And you just see a lot of this very classical architecture that you would expect to find in Europe. At first I thought this was the back of the other one, but he seems to be too far away from this one. But they are definitely more statues on some sort of pedestal. Not something that you would expect to find in Antarctica. Another statue, very interesting looking. I mean, this almost looks, the face shape to me looks almost Incan. Another column, and again we see this landscape in the background that is certainly desolate, and you would expect to see snow everywhere, but more and more people are coming out with what they claim are photographs of Antarctica that does not have snow everywhere. And many of these, they look like they were at one point chiseled. They look like they're not rocks, but pieces, debris from some sort of destruction, some sort of rubble.